Hey JD, are you ready for an O'Connell lecture on the multipolar world order and Eurasian economic union? You bet, Tucker. Just as long as O'Connell doesn't make any jokes about me and Peter Thiel, I guess I can check in and stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, all this talk about Defense Intelligence Agency upping the threat level of the Israeli state, America's greatest ally.
Can two divorced men share an apartment without driving each other crazy?
BB, have you been spying on me again? Because I am going to kick your ass, and Sarah is going to give me all the juicy gossip on you.
Donald, how could you say such a thing? We don't spy, we observe. Out of genuine love and affection, please, let's count our fingers together, like old times.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the history of Israeli spying, both prosecuted and endlessly talked about. We're going to go through the whole list. We're going to talk, of course, about the performative, speculative theater, political theater that Trump is sitting there telling Bibi he will decide what goes on. Well, it's quite possibly true, but I doubt it. It's a bit of political theater. Remember, we said from the beginning they have to run these operations concurrently for at least 10 years. So we've had a couple of years of it now, 8 more years to go. Probably going to be a blockade of Taiwan before the end of the year. Who knows the exact timing, but they'll have to keep this moving along. We'll put that in the spectre of the grand theater of the multipolar world order. This is the fallout. Lots of good things are happening, and of course, a lot of potentially bad things are going on, not least Section 224 and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027. But of course, in the previous video, we described that's actually way worse, way more worse than people realize. But I would put to you, as they said to me many years ago, these things are handled quietly. Remember, you're not allowed to embarrass the Praetorian Guard. You're not allowed to embarrass the intelligence community. They've got to be able to just go on unmolested, waste $50 billion in taxpayers' money, miss everything until a bunch of half-witted open source half-wits can do what apparently a $50 billion a year intelligence community can't do. Regardless, I think things are going to slowly improve. Let's wait and see, including the economy. Let's put aside all the doom and gloomers. But before all that, let us attend.
In cyber is a real domain of power. In cyber is a real domain of power.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we go on, there won't be too many funny AI videos being made, but
Now, Brendon, why do I suspect you won't be sparing us a local AI video stab at me and my boyfriend?
Well, I'm going to show you this map. Now, you can see this map unfolding. You can see good old Adolf Hitler in the United States of Europe. You can see David Ben-Gurion in the Federated States of Greater Israel. You can see Stalin, North Asia, and Mao in South Asia. That's all City of London. That was all funding Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, Professor Anthony Sutton, in his book, Soviet Technology Transfer. Of course, Major Jordan's diaries. We all remember that. Major Rosie Jordan telling us all about all the US technology shipped, all sorts of things shipped to the Soviet Union, which shouldn't have been, but were due to the inherent Silva master spy ring operating within the United States and still to this day operating within the United States. So we see this system in place. That was meant to be in place post-World War II. Well, guess what? Didn't happen. Disaster. Adolf Hitler, the unstable asset, handled by Goering, went his own way and actually invaded the Soviet Union. They were never meant to do that. They were to form that bulwark that you see there. Now, We have the second attempt that started roughly in the 1970s. It really got going, but it basically got going post-World War II. And we saw the end of Eisenhower. There's a few things wrong with Eisenhower, but generally I think he was a good man, generally. Probably had some stuff on him, including his affair with his female driver. But Ike's kind of went his way. Patton was possibly knocked off after his truck accident in Germany. He was, of course, had a very wealthy wife and he didn't need the pension, and he was going to run for president and tell all about what was going on in the broad front strategy pushed forward by Eisenhower and others, allowing Stalin and the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe, much to Patton's disgust. So General Patton was gone. Then the mountain lion, General MacArthur, was fired by Harry Truman because he wouldn't cooperate with the UN. Sad and pathetic. But then we see the slow progress to this new map, particularly through the 1970s under Kissinger and Associates, right hand of Rothschild. What do we see? We see the new multipolar world order, Central Island, the very central island, the Mackinder World Island, the battle for Eurasia, the Eurasian trading bloc with good old, guess who, Ursula von der Leyen in the European Union. We've got Putin in North Asia, the son of Kissinger. We've got Xi Jinping, the new Mao, in South Asia. And of course, we've got Bibi in the Federated States of Greater Israel, which they're not going to get. They're not going to get it now. They'll get a version, but it's not going to be a Greater Israel. So that is the map we need to understand. That is what 9/11 was about, the Eau de Genome plan, which was what? Making the Middle East safe for the formation of Greater Israel, which should have taken place way, way back in the late 1930s. And of course, moving into the Belt and Road and the multipolar world order. So remember those maps. Just remember those maps. And that is our starting point. That is where we begin when we begin our basic analysis of what is going on today.
Wow, that was quite an interesting map, JD. Brendon, tell us more about Kissinger and the Eurasian Economic Union and how we end it.
I get it now. That's why we are in Iran blowing things up. That is all part of our grand plan to get the globalist Davos elites of the EU out of the Middle East, and we, America, get control of Europe and the UK's energy supplies totally, and put immense pressure on China, who we need to slap around a little. President Trump is truly a World Wrestling Federation genius, Peter.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, JD, more like a talented actor and script delivery boy. But I'll never say that publicly.
Now, before we get into the news article behind me, Pentagon raises threat assessment of Israeli spying on US to critical level report. I just want you to know that this is not the first time, obviously, but now the fact that they are reporting it so much gives me optimism. It really does. So this is a very big change we see taking place now in the reporting. So there's clearly a new world order coming into view, a new unipolar world order, not a multipolar world order. Of course, along the way, we have a lot of things to get over, in particular the rise of the machines, automated systems, and bringing this technology back to be used on the rest of us, including, of course, the citizens of the United States. And that is, of course, everybody's worried, the likes of a Peter Thiel and his friends. But remember, Peter Thiel is a nobody in comparison to Google, a literal nobody. It's all Department of Defense, it's all DARPA, it's all Jason Society stuff. These are just the half-wits they throw out to the front. And AI is not finished, no matter all the garbage reporting you're seeing. Don't get me wrong, it's being criticized. It's not going anywhere. AI is here to stay. We may see some change of faces. AI is here to stay. But we need to go back to our favorite half-wit, first of all, and talk about Bibi and Trump as a part of this unfolding package deal of the end of the multipolar world order. So let's now have a nice listen, shall we?
As we had promised, we acted accordingly. The powerful armed forces of the Islamic
Such
Republic
a
of
clown.
Iran, they act upon their stated commitments with speed and precision and make their American and Zionist enemies regret their actions.
I'd just like to say, after playing with AI, local AI production so much, that guy is not real. That is not a real person. That is AI. I like 100% AI. The Ayatollah's long dead. So let's just stop the garbage. Again, this is the theater. The fix was in before the first bomb dropped. The fix was in. That's why they know where everyone is all the time. They've got them totally under control. Just like they killed off all the Hezbollah leadership. All right, because they're creations of the Israeli state, which is what? An outpost of the City of London. Just as China is an outpost of the City of London. Just as Ursula von der Leyen is an outpost of the City of London. Just as Putin is an outpost of the City of London. And El Clowno behind me is an outpost of the City of London. The AI-generated half-wit you see here. All of those generals and those clerics were absolutely corrupt to the core. They're not going to fight to the death. They're going to send young males, young warriors in, and they're going to fill them full of captogen and methamphetamine, and they will fight to the death. And they will kill off their extremists, as many as possible, before they get in a new version of the Iranian government. And of course, they're putting the squeeze on the EU and the squeeze on City of London, China. That's what this is all about, and extending it out. And of course, they're extending out the stress, the psychological stress, the anxiety. What did Adam Curtis tell us 10,000 times? It's all about destabilized perception. We're not winning the war. We're creating destabilized perception.
The underlying aim, Surkov said, was not to win the war, but to use the conflict to create a constant state of destabilized perception in order to manage and control.
Okay, and that might be to also maybe distract from this. Yeah, just saying. That's another back end. But let's listen to the half-wit.
Should the terror regime make the mistake of attacking us again, we will respond with force, because Israel has the full right to self-defense, and we will exercise it as much as necessary.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and before that Ibrahim Zolfagari, who's a spokesperson for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We're now going to go in depth on the story that we brought you earlier about renewed hostilities between Iran and Israel, and President Trump's message that he calls the shots in the region, seemingly a rebuke to the Israeli Prime Minister. Joining us now is Michael Leiter, the Israeli ambassador to the United States. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for...
Anyway, let's move this along a little bit. We'll get to the juicy bit. Here we go.
It's not going to happen.
But in terms of a deal itself, the Financial Times reports that President Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu that he's got no choice but to accept whatever the president negotiates. Here's what the Financial Times wrote. He won't have any choice, Trump told the FT in a telephone interview. I call the shots. I call all the shots. He, Netanyahu, doesn't call the shots. Will Israel be beholden to accept whatever President Trump comes up with?
Will this tiny little pissant country be told to do what the hell they're told? I mean, the fact we're even asking this question is incredible. Look, there's a change taking place. This is a bit of performative spectacle, obviously, political theatre. But nonetheless, the fact that it's happening means there's clearly a sea change. It's not just for show. They're getting willing to show now that things have changed. And we've talked before about all the bases going. And I said back 6 years ago, the United States would have to invade Israel. And they are.
We must bring the supply chain to Mexico, Central and South America. We must return the power to print money or issue crypto to the objective economic data based on transparent government policy. We must protect the allies of the United States from Rothschild's bastard sons. We must create new social policies that encourage and even demand citizen participation in the political decision-making process. We must issue new school curriculums that teach real history. The history of the great conspiratorial banking occult program to enslave the entire planet under a highly complex, tyrannical Big Brother surveillance system. We must instigate policies that limit the speed of technological innovation to take into account human beings, their hopes, their dreams, their right to exist. The freight train rushing towards us of artificial intelligence and robotics must be immediately blunted with firm policy and rational community discussion. And one final thing. Sounds a bit extreme, but I'm being deadly serious. Immediately land 2 Marine divisions in occupied Palestine. Eject all of the Jewish extremist settler movement back to Russia. Disarm the Israeli state and create a secular government with equal representation for Jews, Christians and Muslims. Dismantle the Israeli military-industrial complex and high-technology sector and transport it all back to the United States.
Israel gets to build factories on U.S. soil so that members of Congress cannot vote to cut them off without losing jobs in their own district.
Dismantle the Israeli military-industrial complex and high-technology sector and transport it all back to the United States.
Israel gets to build factories on U.S. soil.
Dismantle the Israeli military-industrial complex and high-technology sector and transport it all back to the United States.
And I am taking back all the factories you were given as Epstein Island gifts. your best people can move to America and be probed in the anus at immigration, going in and going out. All the other jobs will go to Americans, you punk.
You know, I only wish that the Financial Times reporting that would be on the calls with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Because
anyway, we know it's true. Of course, Trump said that. I believe that 1,000%. Let's have a quick look at these maps now. Just remember that map when we talk about this. Pentagon raises threat assessment of Israeli spying on US to critical level. Report. This is not the first time. It's happened multiple times before, but this is the first time it's being widely reported, and it is being widely reported. Trump envoy half-witted Witkoff among key officials being spied on. Oh, no way. I mean, why don't they just go up and ask him? Ask Jared. New York Times says original NBC report vehemently denied by White House. Israeli embassy says story completely false. And that was 6th of June 2026. Interesting date, 6th of June. And by the way, it is the 9th of June 2026, 5:58 p.m. Central Standard Time. The Pentagon in recent weeks raised the counterintelligence threat level from Israel to its highest designation, critical, amid growing tensions between the US and Israel over the direction of the wars in Iran and Lebanon. Reported Saturday, citing current and former US officials. The officials said the new designation stems from heightened concerns in the Pentagon that Israel is spying on top US officials. No way! In a bid to gather information on internal US deliberations about the regional conflicts. Ladies and gentlemen, knowing what we know about who's running what in the United States, it's kind of pretty funny. It's a bit like arresting Al Capone on tax charges, you know what I mean? It's kind of funny. According to the report, the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency raised the level for Israel in recent weeks to critical in an internal message. Do you remember in 2001, the DEA issued warnings about the Israeli art students?
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th. Fox News correspondent Carl Cameron has details in the first of a four-part series.
Investigators from numerous government agencies are part of a working group that's been compiling evidence since the mid-90s. These documents detail hundreds of incidents in cities and towns across the country that investigators say, quote, may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. The first part of the investigation focuses on Israelis who say they are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. They repeatedly made contact with U.S. government personnel, the report says, by saying they wanted to sell cheap art or handiwork. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases, the DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel.
And indeed, the FBI was complaining about them issuing a warning. So this has been going on for a long time. All these Israeli art students being around critical areas, Zoom copters, all these little stalls, secret stalls. Remember later on we had the secret stalls. I actually confronted some of those people, remember, back in 2008.
Investigators suspect a front. Shortly after the New York Times and Washington Post reported the Israeli detentions last month, the carts began vanishing. Zoomcopter's webpage says, we are aware of the situation caused by thousands of mall carts being closed at the last minute. This in no way reflects that since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States.
You from Israel? No, from Germany.
From Germany as well? Well, got a nice mix of it.
Yeah, just Germany and Israel.
Oh, okay. All right. I've got a funny question for you. Yeah. I'm a bit worried that you might be punishing Israelis.
What are you afraid for?
It's probably...
I want to finish this stuff because really pisses me off.
I don't blame you, but it pisses me off.
No, it really pisses me off.
It pisses me off that Jewish bankers funded the Russian Revolution, they funded Hitler. Did you know that? One was the greatest anti-Semite of all time, funded by Jewish bankers. Shit. Warburg. How come the Warburg came and lived out their time in Germany? How come 180,000 Jews serve in the German army? Brian Griggs wrote a brilliant book.
The same. Yeah, you're doing the same.
Well, I'm just telling you, these are a lot of things that make sense.
Have a nice day.
But you know, you're in my country now, and I will.
It's my country as well.
It's not your country, is Israel. You will do anything for Israel. You will kill a non-Jew for Israel. You will do it.
It's not true.
You couldn't give a fuck about Israel. You couldn't give a shit
Have
about
a nice
Israel.
day, and asking you not to bother me.
Well, you don't bother me. Go back to Israel. Go back to Israel.
One day.
Take Leon with you. But I warn you now, my friend, if anything goes bang in this state or in this country, believe me. Believe me. Richard. Believe me.
Have a nice day. Blame
No, don't tell me to have a nice day in my country.
Yeah.
You have a nice day.
I hope you have a nice day. Please don't follow me. You know what? I'm going to put
Like when you followed me to my house, did you know that? The day after I rang to go to my friend's house, knock on the door, a foreigner selling cheap artworks. That's you, no doubt.
Listen, I'm really asking you, don't do it to me.
I tell you fucking what, if you tell your fucking handlers anyone else when you go back to Israel, it's going to get fucking tough for Jews in Australia, mate, until you start speaking out against the extremists in Israel and the extremists here. I will not have a subversive Jewish subversion in my country. Do you understand?
All right.
No, you are right.
Let me just leave you.
No, I'll do whatever I fucking want. You just involved in it. I want to speak to you about intelligence. Oh, come on. Come on, brother. Won't the Gentiles be grafted into the vine, Ishak? How long have you been in Israeli intelligence? Are you just a subcontractor?
Yes. One of the current US officials was cited as saying the Pentagon's assessment includes a 7-page document that describes a series of specific incidents that raised US concern. Oh, if that raised US concern, I wonder what they can do when they find out all their SCADA or their industrial controller chips, programmable logic chips, or their back ends, their Internet of Things in the factories, electrical grid, water, sewage, oil and gas pipelines. Oh my God, the refineries. What are they going to do when people find out it's all Israeli? That's pretty funny. Officials told the network that Israeli intelligence gathering efforts were viewed as exceeding the level of espionage normally expected between allied nations, though they said it was unclear whether any single incident prompted the threat level increase. I mean, Witkoff would just go to his best buddy Jared and tell everyone what's going on. So think about some of the silliness of this. Knowing what we know about Jared Kushner from 666 Fifth Avenue, New York, what we know about silly Witkoff, what we know about the spying, core coding of Microsoft, R&D on every major US technology hub. They're now, they're running the Amazon cloud security, Asaf Rapoport, remember that guy? That's Telpiot, Unit 8200. I'm sorry, it's so funny reading this. I can't help myself. And you're thinking that they're upping their spying? It's really silly. That's pretty silly. One of the officials that Israel has stepped up its efforts to spy on, and it's US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, as if Steve isn't just telling him everything I want to know. The New York Times reported Saturday, citing other officials who corroborated the NBC report, Witkoff has been heavily involved in negotiations with Iran and has led the US negotiating teams in talks between Israel and Hamas, as well as between Russia and Ukraine. Citing US intelligence reports, the Times said Washington is also concerned Israel is stepping up efforts to listen in on the United States Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Elbridge Colby, and one of his deputies, Michael P. Domino IV. One senior official, quoted by the Times, said that the aggressiveness of Israel's intelligence gathering on US officials since Trump entered office last year is unhinged. Wow. It's pretty powerful language. So they're keeping the pressure up. The White House and Israel's embassy in the US both vehemently denied the embassy report, while the Pentagon declined to comment, the network said. A spokesman for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. said in a statement to NBC that it is completely false that Israel spies on the US. No way! Huh? After studying this for 17 years, do you realize how funny this sounds to me? I'm actually trying so hard not to burst out laughing. I really am. I've had to pause a couple of times and almost cry into my cup of water. Quote, Israel does not gather intelligence on American entities, let alone US government officials. No way. The spokesman said, Israel's intelligence collection efforts are aimed at its enemies, not its allies. No, everyone is your enemy. Any claims to the contrary are either misinformed or politically motivated. Is Tucker or Candace just going to have me on? Or Mary Silva on? Mary Silva was just interviewed by good old Jeff Rance. Went quite well. Jeff's a bit black-pilled. Jeff's a bit bitter these days. Jeff Rance been around a long time. Jeff is not happy with the Israeli state for some reason. Can't think why. A White House official said in a statement, quote, "This entire story is false and sourced to someone who doesn't even have any knowledge of what's going on." The officials told NBC that the most likely outcome of the new assessment is that US officials will take more precautions when traveling to Israel or meeting Israeli officials. The US already takes extra precautions when visiting Israel, one of the current US officials said. They're well known to aggressively collect. Oh yeah, I'd say so. However, the official said that there did not appear to be any impact on the high-level intelligence sharing that occurs on a daily basis between the two countries, particularly associated with the war in Iran. So this is speculative, performative theatre, but still, it's good. It does show a sea change in what's going on. That's because of all the public pressure, and a lot of that has got nothing to do with your internet star, multi-million-dollar dissident of choice. It has to do with Mary Silva, myself, Lee Levino, and probably 5 or 6 other people who are quietly going to their members of Congress, quietly talking to their high-level friends and officials in the military. That's who is changing things, okay? It has nothing to do with Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson. They're just there as cover. Israel also has a long-standing commitment not to engage in any intelligence operations in the US. That was put in place amid the damage caused to the relationship between the two countries in the wake of the Jonathan Pollard scandal. And they really stopped after that. Now, if you've been watching our videos, then you know how ridiculous this all is. But anyway, and there we go. Can we stop here? I think so. I guess we'll finish with a few more quotes. Axios' Barak Ravid cited a US official who summarized Trump's message to Netanyahu as follows, quote, "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this," end quote. Well, I'm sure Trump can get his secret weapon, Sarah Netanyahu, to fix any problems. Yeah. But look, this is all good. It's performative, speculative theatre, but it's still good. So just winding up that little section, it's still good stuff. Remember we talked about the bases before. They're putting giant bases inside Israel, literally inside. So the September 10th, 2001 Army War College document stating they're going to have to take 2 divisions of Marines in to settle down the Israeli state and the Palestinians is going to happen. It's moving in slow motion, but it is happening. The bigger question is the cover-up going to be allowed to continue, or will the $50 billion a year intelligence community in America and around the world, in fact, be held accountable? And ask yourselves, what were you guys doing besides privatizing everything, as the great Bill Binney, and we're going to do a video on that, where Bill Binney said they just privatized everything and then charged 5 times as much and handed it all to not just to their friends, but to Israeli companies. This is how Israeli companies were let directly into the United States post 9/11, in particular, as they built up to 9/11. And 9/11 is still the key to understanding all the computer systems and everything else that has gone on for the last probably 30 years in particular. So on the one hand, while it's awfully humorous hearing this and reading about this, is also positive. It's absolutely speculative, spectacle and theatre, political theatre, as Trump's ratings drop and plummet. But the US economy will survive. They'll bring in all the tech, getting ready in the final year of his administration, assuming he lasts that long, but I'm going to presume he's probably going to. I really thought they would have dumped him by now as a disposable condom, but he's still there, and just watch. If you think things are out of control, they are not. Don't think all this bubble's going to burst and it's all over. They know what they're doing. They've got to build up more energy, get more nuclear reactors happening, but it is going to happen. So let's go back to the history of spying against the United States. Let's just quickly run over it. Good old perplexity. Now, this is where AI falls flat. You have to spank the AI to get it to do what you want. It just kept giving me these very superficial answers on Israeli spying. And I wrote, I'm not writing a PhD thesis. I want everything, every allegation. For a large language model, you forget a lot. Phil Giraldi and Sibel Edmonds, Israel and Turkey scandals, that's back in 2006. I want you to go back over everything and start from scratch, bringing it all together. There is also Fox News 2001 reports on Israel and spying. Carl Cameron, then Brett Hume, remember. Variant and DEA backdoors, Converse Infosys and data billing. I want all of it, every allegation. Now make a new list, thanks. You just got to spank that AI. Understood, boss. And here we go. So these are the classic prosecuted espionage cases. So these are the hard cases where the US moved it to court. Jonathan Pollard, 1984-85, of course. A guy, and remember the facts about this case. Dick Cheney was not amused. That Jonathan, this is how good, remember how they fired James Angleton in 1975, was it 74, 75? They got rid of Nixon 74 after Angleton warned him about quote unquote Jew boy Kissinger as being the leaker. And then they basically got rid of both of them. James Angleton, the head of CIA counterintelligence, obviously had some pretty severe flaws, but he wasn't wrong. He may have been a drunk and very paranoid, but he was paranoid for a reason, knowing all the Venona decrypts, and he knew how deep the Silva master spy ring was, and he was shaken by his good friend Kim Philby turning out to be a Soviet asset. But the joke was they get rid of James Angleton, they demonized him, and what happened after that? Did things improve? No, they have now brought back the exact system James Angleton had, and now they're slowly getting rid of all this crap out of the system by bringing back James Angleton's system in, which is a highly compartmentalized and centralized counterintelligence operation to find spies. And of course, it's not just about finding spies, it's also about confusing the enemy and, you know, getting them to buy all your backdoor chips. So it's not all one way, and that includes, it's not all one way into Israel. They've got all their own assets in Israel as well, like Daniel Lewin, who was killed on 9/11, strangely, that day, a graduate of Telpiot Unit 8200. So with these things in mind, James Angleton goes away and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And you see the Binational Science Foundation, the Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, you see the BARD, the Binational Agriculture Research and Development Foundation, okay? Even though they're in the small millions, $5 million budgets, stuff like that, it's a place where people can go and meet and form relationships and be friends. You don't have to meet in a coffee shop or in a park bench somewhere quietly. You can meet all your new Israeli/Russian GRU friends at these perfectly reasonable, legislated meeting places, these foundations. And of course, you then also have, and let's remember, Mike Gill and New Hampshire and the $1 trillion of the Pandora Papers up there, which was in Boston Private Trust, which was bought by who? Silicon Valley Bank. Suddenly, I'm handing, via a relationship with the sister of Colonel Andrew Kernan, then General Milley's JAG, in 2023, we are handing him Mike Gill's work. Mike Gill refuses to hand it over suddenly because his FBI friends told him not to, because I told him who it was going to be given to. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, Silicon Valley Bank collapses. Fancy that. How could it even collapse? It was a drug money laundering op which they would launder into the high-tech sector startups, and it would end its way over into Israel, and the startups would just disappear, and all the money was distributed, including all that cash from the Pentagon as well. So you can see how this system's been operating for a long, long time. And Jonathan Pollard was, number one, a drunk, a cocaine addict who admitted he was a cocaine addict, who told anyone who would listen he was a Mossad spy. I'm not making this stuff up. This is well documented. He was literally running around saying, I work for the Mossad. He would walk out of the Office of Naval Intelligence with suitcases full of documents, to the point where he would leave the door ajar with a suitcase, and the security guard would help him carry out the suitcases and put them in his car. This went on for months. And there was Rafi Eitan with his photocopier awaiting him at the apartment. You can't make this stuff up. But where was the $50 billion a year intelligence community? Of course, it wasn't that much back then. But do you understand how absolutely dead bones useless you have to be to be this incompetent? Can you possibly put your head around how utterly useless and incompetent they fired James Angleton and the CIA just got 10 times worse? 10 times worse. You had Robert Hansen. That was a bit different. He was very cautious. And you had Aldrich Ames, who was a drunk and was so suspicious that it took them what? He's running around in $50,000 Jaguars. He's buying houses with cash. Oh, that's my Colombian wife's rich family. Nobody bothered to look until one of the secretaries decided to have a look. And it took a couple of the secretaries to work it out for FBI counterintelligence and the CIA. Think about it. Can you imagine? And yet they just keep, move right along. Move right along. They just keep getting more money. They fail 10 times more. They didn't just fail on 9/11. Some of them were intimately involved on 9/11. Fail more, get more money. Fail more, get more money. Fail more, get more money. They become richer and richer. They privatize. All their friends are making billions. As Bill Binney said, they were coming out saying, there's plenty of money for everyone. I'm sorry, that was on a major mainstream documentary. No one was hung. Where's Clapper? Where's Brennan? Where's Michael Hayden? Why aren't they in jail? Why aren't they in jail? Hello? Any accountability on that $50 billion a year budget, boys? Or you're the Praetorian Guard? You can't be touched? Is that it? You're untouchable? Where are the Bill Binnies of the world? Where have they all gone? They're too busy making cash with their new Israeli/Russian friends. That's where. Is things changing? Yes, they are. But here's the question I have to ask. Is anybody going to be held accountable? Anybody? I mean, the usual plan is we string it along till everyone dies, then we have the inquiry once everyone's dead. That's usually how it strings along. It's going to be up to the American people and the rest of us to say, no, we're going to have some accountability. We want people to answer questions. And then after that, we want indictments. I understand the point of sometimes it's better to let's just tell the truth and let's make sure we don't mess things up again. Like as a nurse, or as a doctor in Australia, when I was going through the nursing system in the 90s, they said we don't want to end up like America where everyone has massive insurance policies and everyone's getting sued every 5 minutes. And then there's no incentive to come out and admit to what you've done and make the system better. And so what they said was, and the police wanted to do a similar thing, let's be able to just say, sorry, a mistake was made without going crazy on all the insurance. And there needs to be something like that as well, some sort of reconciliation process. You need to start talking about it. When you visit your friends, your family, you're obviously interested in this subject. When you're at Republican meetings, you need to start talking about this. There needs to be accountability, and maybe some people don't lose their jobs and some people don't go to jail for the rest of their life. I don't know. I didn't lose someone on 9/11. Did you? So I didn't lose anyone in the Middle East, whether you're an Arab or an American soldier. So I'll leave that up to you. But somebody's got to stay home after school. And if the American public make it an issue, just as I do believe there was an organic movement against all these data centers, and it was largely organic. There was a bit of shit stirring going on behind the scenes as well, but it was largely organic. Just as you can get that going, you should be able to get an inquiry into the US intelligence service, not just the US, all intelligence services. We need that. Jonathan Pollard, nothing has changed. Aldrich Ames, nothing changed. Robert Hansen, nothing appears to have changed. You know what they did? They just said, we're just going to come out completely in the open under all these new foundation systems. Thank you. Now we're just going to weld you all together. And what do we see happening now? Now, it doesn't have to happen. I don't see it as all bad. What I do see it as cover up, damage control, and damage mitigation. The question is, maybe some of that's necessary because they got leverage too. People can come out and say, well, if you're going to kill me and destroy everything, what have I got to lose? We'll just hit the kill switch because they've kill switched America. But of course, the United States will just say, listen, dickhead, how'd you like a tactical nuke on Tel Aviv? So he's worried too. The point is, what's the best way to do it? Nobody wants to lose their money. Nobody wants to lose their career. So everyone says, let's handle this quietly. And that's what you see going on. That's why it's not all bad. But does that make you feel better? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. But I get it. So that's Jonathan Pollard. Lawrence Franklin and AIPAC Iran leaks. That's straight out of the, I do believe, Sybil Edmonds and Kill the Messenger, that great documentary. And that's where Pentagon Iran analysts who passed classified information on US Iran policy to AIPAC officials and discussed it with an Israeli diplomat. Franklin pled guilty to unauthorized disclosure, original sentence later reduced to house arrest. Lower visibility tech export cases with Israeli links. Open source academic work cites multiple export control and procurement cases where Israeli entities acquired controlled US technology, often handled administratively rather than as full espionage prosecutions. Yeah, imagine what they have now. Imagine, well, this is very serious. So these are scattered and usually not branded as espionage in court, but they are part of the intelligence collection ecosystem Clark and others describe. So this is the systemic espionage patterns documented by the United States intelligence community in the academic work. So these are official academic papers which didn't result in a prosecution. So the CIA 1996 report, Israel's extensively engaged in espionage. So a CIA report to Congress publicly named Israel, along with France, Japan does it as well, as extensively engaged in espionage against US interests, including economic and industrial spying. This becomes a key baseline for understanding Israeli collection in the US through the 1990s and Clinton era. And then, of course, you had Monica Lewinsky with Clinton. They had a lot of dirt on good old Bill, obviously, and, of course, Epstein. The Clark Journal of Palestine, Duncan Clark's 1998 JPS article, Israel's Economic Espionage in the United States, argues Israel has run an aggressive campaign since 1948 to acquire US economic, technological, and military-related secrets. He emphasizes systemic high-tech, telecom, and defense sector targeting, with many cases handled quietly because of political sensitivity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is in 1998. Think about it, this long history. So they've got all these discussion papers. You've got the DEA and the FBI coming out in 2001 before 9/11, and yet nothing seems to happen. You ever notice that? Israeli espionage in the United States overview ongoing. A later synthesis notes repeated allegations across decades, industrial espionage, political spying, and tech collection. It explicitly references the 1996 CIA report, Pollard economic cases, and 2000 instances. Clinton era and pre-9/11 intelligence friction. Well, it's certainly nice to know there was actually some friction. Pollard is a Clinton-era diplomatic weapon in the 1990s. In the late 1990s, Netanyahu pressed Bill Clinton to release Pollard as part of peace talk bargaining. CIA and the Department of Justice strongly opposed. Thank you. This turned a Reagan-era spy case into a Clinton-era trust crisis, with US intelligence adamant Pollard remain in jail because they had a lot of stuff on Clinton, obviously. Clinton-era economic tech espionage continuation. Clark and the CIA assessment both imply that economic and industrial espionage against US tech continued robustly through the 1990s, even though headline prosecutions were rare. So here's my favourite bit. Post-9/11 Fox News, Amdocs, Comverse, Art Students Complex. This is the cluster you specifically flagged. Carl Cameron's 2001 Fox News 4-part series, December 2001, Fox says Carl Cameron aired a 4-part investigation alleging extensive Israeli spying in and on the US, especially post-9/11. No joke. Key themes: Israeli intelligence possibly tracking Arabs inside the US and having foreknowledge of 9/11 that was not fully shared with the US. Oh really? Tucker Carlson's not going to tell you that. Ian Carroll had a go because he was a bit embarrassed. He's now dropped out, hasn't he? Oh, I'm having a break for a while. Good old Ian. Arrest of dozen of Israelis post-9/11 visa violations, Patriot Act detentions, connecting to the so-called art student phenomena and dancing Israelis. But why talk about that, eh? Why talk about that? No, it's old news. Old news. Allegations that Israeli telecom billing firms handled US phone data could compromise US law enforcement and intelligence investigations. No joke. They didn't allege, they stated it blatantly and openly, that every time they went after an Israeli-Russian drug dealer, they would just disappear. So they speculated openly, the Drug Enforcement Agency and the FBI, that the Israeli company Variant had backdoors in their data intercept equipment, and they're more powerful than ever. They're doing all the FBI stuff, all the surveillance stuff, more powerful than ever, Variant. Amdocs billing data and NSA FBI concerns. Amdocs is an Israeli-founded, publicly traded billing and customer management firm. It's handling billing data for many major US telcos. Cameron and subsequent commentary reported a 1991 top secret security classified SCI report warned that US call records were leaking into foreign, notably Israeli hands. Amdocs has been investigated more than once over possible security breaches and alleged ties to Israeli organized crime. No joke. So I noticed Cappy, our favorite army guy, good old Cappy, is talking about how in Europe they're just facing an onslaught. No matter how much they stop, it just keeps coming. Well, we're going to talk about ICTS and all these Shin Bet founded security companies that were intimately involved in 9/11. Airport security also do what? They do port security of shipping, and they just so happen to do port security all over the world, and they even do like the human resource databases. The databases for the computer systems at these ports, they're all Israeli. We'll talk about it. The system is so deeply ingrained and it's in the open, but, maybe Tucker will tell us or Candace. Who knows? A later New York Times referenced assessment said the investigation did not find evidence that government telephone systems were penetrated despite intensive scrutiny. Amdocs and Israeli officials have consistently denied wrongdoing. Amdocs says the FBI investigations turned up nothing, nada, and no US agency accused it of espionage. Oh my God. So Converse, Infosys, Variant, lawful intercept backdoors, and I remind you, this is what I was partly arrested for, exposing all this stuff. And on, the Israeli art students, the dancing Israeli. Just to remind you of Sibel Edmonds' Turkish-Israeli joint network allegation. She was an FBI translator, and she outed all the shenanigans going on with drug trafficking, just like Kay Griggs talked about, secondary weapons sales between Turkey, Israel, and the United States. And there you go. They went after her as a whistleblower. Let's not forget her. A Turkish-Israeli joint intelligence operation penetrated US government institutions, the State Department, Pentagon, and Congress to obtain nuclear and defense secrets. And it's all going, back to Europe and the Soviet Union, or the old Russian Federation. This network involving Turkish front groups and Israeli-linked actors paid bribes to officials and ran a black market auction for nuclear and weapons-related information with bidders including foreign governments and criminal networks. No way. Named figures included State Department officials Mark Grossman, allegedly passing classified data and helping foreign agents infiltrate labs like Scandia and Los Alamos via security clearances. She claimed Congressman Tom Lantos, working with AIPAC-linked aide Alan McCoskey, passed highly classified documents that ultimately went to Israel. And the good old friends of the neocons, friends of Bill Kristol, were all involved. These claims remain allegations. They were more than allegations. There have been no public espionage indictments stemming directly from Edmonds' most explosive charges, but the heavy use of secrecy and retro-accurate classification around her case gives it weight in critical circles. We have former CIA Phil Giraldi and other ex-intelligence community commentators. He's been exposing this for years. He then went on to say how great the multipolar world order is and work with good old Mr. Unz, which was disgusting. And then they deleted all my messages to him. So, you tell me what happened to Phil Giraldi. But used to do a lot of very good work exposing all this. John Kirdakow, he gives some anecdotal accounts, but he's just a fraud himself. Sandra Trowan of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The police came after me over that. Amir Gat case, alleged Israeli tech spying at Caltech via NASA. There's thousands. The Pegasus NSO group hacks of US diplomats, other Israeli corporate spying scandals with US angles, all the private companies private security contractors, military intelligence, but the private subcontractors are working as private investigators for like people like Harvey Weinstein, for people like Curtis Olson and Mormon lawyer Eric Kennedy, who you're going to find out more about in the coming days. So this private contracting has to end now. I mean, now that's got to be another, and Mary will include that in her policy angles, an end to these private contractors. And they always end up charging 4 or 5 times more. I mean, it's just a scandal. So let's see if Hegseth comes through with the audit of the Pentagon. And here's another audit he's going to have to do of these private contractors. The other Israeli corporate spying scandals with US angles. There's Israel's own Trojan horse affair, mid-2000s, exposed large Israeli firms, Amdocs among them, using illicit spyware to snoop on commercial rivals, including US companies like Hewlett-Packard and others. And you see all this technology transfer overseas, just decimating US industry and the US education system and the electrical engineers that were never got jobs. And you brought in all these cheap Indian workers. You see the decimation that has taken place. Well, let's see if all this is fixed. It looks like it is, well, at least anecdotally. Recent high-level US espionage threats assessments. You see that 2014 Newsweek Times of Israel, shocking extent of Israeli spying on US. 2019 Politico, Stingray devices near the White House. 2026, the latest one, the Defense Intelligence Agency, critical threat level, and Witkoff-Colby-Domino case. So this is just a very basic list. Very basic list. Let's wind this up now, shall we? Look, these are basic lists. I've been at this a long time, over 17 years, and it's cost me a lot. And people have slowly, a very small cadre of people have been pushing this hard to people that matter, including military people, retired and serving. We've had Heather contact us from the US State Department. She's attending meetings, of course, and she's taken photographs getting accosted by all the the Washington, D.C. Chinese embassy staff. These are the people that have contacted me. Highest level Pentagon. Back in Australia, ministerial level. Special Forces commanders back in Australia, James McMahon, Colonel James McMahon. High level intel. And we see the culmination of all this hard work. Being a greedy little so-and-so that I am, I just like, could you just give me 20 grand? I'm down from 3.8 mil to 20 grand, but, as Bergie said, they won't give us a damn dime, apparently not. But you can see how this is all unfolded now. So there's a lot of good signs. The question is not whether it's being fixed. It is being fixed. The question is, will anyone be held accountable? And these are the big questions we have to ask. So we go back to the maps I showed you at the very beginning. Once you understand that map, that Eurasian Economic Union, you can understand that article with Bibi, thick as thieves. Remember, the Israeli press has been the number one. Jews have been number one in exposing this. Because it goes both ways, baby. There's lots of loyal American Jews with Israeli citizenship too. The spine goes both ways. They have been exposing this for so long. It all coincided 2008 when it started for me. James Bamford was writing about it in 2008. The Israeli press started going hell for leather about it 2008, 2009. It was all seemingly coordinated. I don't know, was it? I certainly didn't coordinate anything. I just went by instinct and started it off. So, a lot of good things happening. The question is, will it be exposed? Will anybody be held accountable? That is the question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope to bring you more AI maps and stuff like that. Let's up the production values a little. I have been a little bit busy trying to get stuff to work, much to my chagrin, but I want you to understand that things are way better than they keep making out, and I don't care how many YouTube videos you're watching. It's over. The collapse is nigh. AI is finished. AI is doing very nicely, thank you. They just got to get the energy grid up and running. It ain't stopping at all. There might be a lull, I hope so, because I'd really like to be able to buy a high-end GPU with 32 gig of memory at least, but a Pro 6000 would be really nice at a reasonable price. Or how about a M.2 drive? How about M.2 drive? That'd be nice to buy. Or some extra memory, because the prices are freaking 3 and 4 times. They're outrageous, and I mean outrageous for this stuff. So hopefully a lot of that will calm down, and we'll see there's a lot of signs now that it is calming down, and we're going to see a slow down of this implementation. But I promise you, though they may have a lot of half-wits out the front, there's people in the back rooms and they know exactly what they are doing. And what they want is lots of political spectacle of all kinds. Remember, at the end of the day, there's 2 more years of Trump, and certainly another year they can really use up with bad publicity and bad stuff. There's no opposition, so who the hell cares? But wait till that final year when they really start rolling out the goodies. That's going to be a very interesting year. Ladies and gents, I'm going to try and get a daily video going. God willing, it will happen. Let's talk again very soon. Till then, I'll leave you with the great Bill Cooper.
What is our common bond truly? Freedom. Freedom. Without freedom, you can't be a Christian no matter what denomination you belong to. You can't be a Buddhist. You can't own a donut shop. You can't drive from here to Oregon. You can't be an American because that's what it's all about, and it's the only thing that it's all about. Nothing else. Nothing else. It's about freedom. Complete freedom.